At exactly 5:23 p.m. local time, a U.S. Air Force F-16 jet belonging to the 421st Fighter Squadron was flying overhead, offering aerial protection for a U.S. naval task force sailing along Yemen's coastline. Although the patrol had remained largely uneventful up to this point, everything was about to change in an instant. Without the pilot's knowledge, a Houthi surface-to-air missile battery positioned near Houthi had locked onto the aircraft and fired a missile. With an effective range reaching 23 kilometers and capable of flying at speeds up to 2.8 times the speed of sound, the pilot had only a few seconds to act. Thankfully, the F-16 is equipped with a robust suite of electronic countermeasure systems that can render a lethal missile like this one virtually ineffective. Installed on the aircraft's nose is the AN/APG-83 radar, which serves as the initial line of defense against such threats. Upon detecting the incoming SA-6 missile at a distance of 42 kilometers, the pilot executed a sharp dive, descending from an altitude of 30,000 feet to 15,000 feet. This maneuver was critical because the SA-6 system can continuously track its target. As a semi-active missile, the SA-6 requires ground-based radar to illuminate the target with sufficient energy to establish a fire control solution. Once launched, the missile relies on that data as it speeds toward its objective. In the final seconds before impact, an onboard seeker activates within the warhead to home in on the F-16. By diving rapidly, the pilot attempted to break the missile's fire control lock, but that alone wasn't enough. The radar, capable of detecting fighter-sized targets with radar cross-sections of just 5 square meters at ranges up to 470 kilometers, picked up additional SA-6 missiles closing in. With only 18 seconds left to respond, the pilot continued performing erratic evasive maneuvers. These unpredictable turns, however, severely impacted the aircraft's own radar tracking abilities. Although the system can monitor up to 20 targets simultaneously, its effectiveness drops significantly, down to just 47% when trying to detect targets that are more than 60 degrees off its central axis. Because of the extreme maneuvers, the F-16 became partially blind to some of the incoming threats. That's when another defense system kicked in. If you examine the pylons under each wing, you'll notice a piece of equipment known as the Terma Pylon Integrated Dispensing System, or PIDS. This system plays the next critical role in disrupting the engagement chain. While each unit weighs around 19 kilograms and reduces the aircraft's overall payload capacity by 3%, the trade-off is entirely justified due to its powerful defensive function. Each PIDS unit is fitted with 6 Hensed AR-60 V2 ultraviolet sensors, offering full 360-degree spherical detection capable of identifying missile launches up to 10 kilometers away. These systems are designed to deploy both infrared flares and radio frequency chaff. Once the PIDS detected the approaching SA-6 missiles, it released 12 MJU-50B flares along with 24 RR-180 chaff bundles, generating a half-kilometer wide IR/RF decoy cloud. Do you think the US should do more to stop the Houthi threat? Let us know in the comments and subscribe for weekly military briefings simplified for you. Despite this, the countermeasures failed to fully break the missile lock. That left the pilot with one final defensive tool, the AML-Q-184 jamming pod mounted underneath the aircraft. This pod can jam threats operating within the 2 to 20 GHz frequency range using digital radio frequency memory (DRFM) technology. Since the SA-6 fire control radar operates between 6 and 8 GHz, the pod was more than capable of countering it. Once activated, the pod severed the missile's link to its ground guidance, reducing its targeting accuracy by 70% and causing the missiles to veer off harmlessly. Even after this failed attempt, the Houthis weren't finished. Just 44 minutes later, at 6:07 p.m. local time, a US MQ-9 Reaper drone, launched from Chabili Airfield in Djibouti, was on a standard reconnaissance mission roughly 50 miles northeast of Houthi. The drone was tracking Houthi supply convoys moving to reinforce enemy positions in the area. Still frustrated by their failure to hit the F-16, Houthi operators launched another SA-6, this time at the Reaper. Though not as advanced as the fighter jet, the drone's Pandora missile warning system successfully detected the launch. Within 8 seconds, the Reaper's AN/ALA-47 countermeasure system was triggered as the drone climbed above 15,000 feet to position itself above the threat zone and outside of its 30-degree vulnerability band, directly beneath the aircraft. As it gained altitude, the Reaper deployed 8 flares over the course of 4 seconds, producing a 300-square-meter cloud of chaff to disrupt missile tracking. However, the drone's countermeasure supply is limited. It can carry a maximum of 60 MJU-60B flares and 120 RR-180 chaff bundles, sufficient for up to 12 separate engagements per mission. Once the Reaper uses 75% of this loadout, it must return to base. To determine when countermeasures should be deployed, the drone relies on its ALR-69 radar warning receiver, which monitors for radar emissions and guides defensive action. The ALR-69 radar warning receiver is capable of monitoring signal frequencies ranging from 0.5 to 20 GHz. This allows it to detect radar emissions from SA-6 systems at distances up to 200 kilometers, with azimuth accuracy within 1 degree. With this system active, the Reaper drone can react to Houthi missile launches in as little as 2 seconds. Thanks to this rapid detection, drone operators are typically able to deploy sufficient countermeasures in time to prevent a direct hit. However, in this case, the Reaper didn't escape completely unharmed. After returning to base, maintenance crews discovered that multiple steel pellets from the SA-6's warhead, of which there are 12,000, had pierced the drone's right wing. Fortunately, the damage was minor, and the Reaper was back in service shortly afterward. Though these kinds of missile launches may appear routine, this particular incident was far from ordinary. It marked the first time the Houthis had fired on a manned U.S. aircraft in the current conflict. The U.S. response to this unprovoked escalation would go on to set a new precedent in an already intensifying theater. In the immediate aftermath, both U.S. Central Command and the White House expressed alarm over the audacity of the daytime attack on American forces. President Trump quickly concluded that only a swift and overwhelming retaliatory strike would suffice. Within 8 hours, the USS Spruance, a guided missile destroyer, was ordered to move closer to Yemen's coast. Once the vessel reached its designated launch zone, the crew received encrypted firing instructions from Central Command. Under normal circumstances, Tomahawk cruise missiles would have been the weapon of choice. However, the Navy opted for a more unconventional solution. Each destroyer, DDG, carries a diverse mix of missiles within its vertical launch system, VLS cells, including Tomahawks, SM-2S, ESSMs, Anti-6S. This varied arsenal enables naval vessels to execute both offensive and defensive operations against multiple threat types. What made the selection of the SM-6 missile particularly notable was the message it conveyed. The SM-6 is one of the Navy's most advanced surface-to-air weapons, second in capability only to the SM-3. Typically reserved for the most serious aerial threats, the SM-6 can carry a 1,500 kg warhead and reach speeds of Mach 3.5. Although originally designed for air defense, the Navy has recently adapted it for land attack roles as well. While the Tomahawk boasts a longer range, up to approximately 1,500 miles, the SM-6's superior speed makes it significantly more difficult to intercept. Its quick strike capability makes it a critical stopgap measure until the Navy's strike missile becomes fully operational. For this reason, the SM-6 was modified for surface-to-surface strikes. Despite having possessed this capability for years, this marked the first public use of the SM-6 in that role. The decision to use it now was due to the fact that the intended target, a Houthi missile launcher, was mobile and actively relocating. Based on satellite intelligence, the SA-6 launcher and its paired IS-91 radar were still positioned in Houthi. However, with the launcher capable of moving at speeds up to 34 miles, it could have traveled hundreds of miles before a strike could be initiated. This meant that speed was critical and there was absolutely no time to lose. Once Central Command issued the launch order, the USS Spruance raced toward its designated launch area in the southern Red Sea. While the ship closed in on its firing position, the combat watchstanders had less than 30 minutes to design, plot, and authorize a full strike plan. This planning is essential because missiles don't fly in direct lines. That would make them too easy to intercept. Instead, the crew must program the missile's path through a network of waypoints, sometimes dozens, to reach the first pre-programmed location. From there, the classified mission library takes control and guides the missile to its final destination. At around 3:45 a.m. local time, 2 SM-6 missiles launched from the VLS cells in a bright burst of light. With several hundred miles to cover, the missiles took roughly 6 minutes to reach their target. Despite the Houthis' layered air defense systems, they offered no resistance to the SM-6S, which soared through and obliterated the SA-6 launcher. After the impact, intercepted communications confirmed the site had been destroyed and 8 Houthi personnel eliminated. But the US mission wasn't over. Between 2014 and 2015, the Houthis had seized 12 to 15 SA-6 launchers from Yemeni government stockpiles. In the years since, Iran has significantly upgraded their radar capabilities and helped integrate modern seekers into their missiles. As a result, the Houthis have amassed a dangerous and sophisticated missile stockpile, which they have repeatedly used to threaten US aircraft. This ongoing threat could not be ignored. Following the precision strike on February 20th that eliminated a single SA-6 system, the Navy determined it was time to send a far more decisive message. At 6:00 p.m. local time, the first of 4 F/A-18 Super Hornet strike waves launched from the deck of the USS Harry S. Truman. But this time, the aircraft were loaded with far heavier firepower than usual. Whereas standard missions might call for a 2,000 lb JDAM or a bunker-busting bomb, this operation took a more aggressive turn. The F/A-18S were armed with AGM-154 Joint Standoff Weapons, JSOWs, a long-range air-to-surface guided missile capable of reaching distances of 117 to 130 kilometers when released from high altitude. These GPS-guided munitions are equipped with either 145 bomblets or a 192-pound warhead, giving them significant destructive power, perfect for deep strike missions like this one. Between 6:00 p.m. and 11:30 p.m., multiple strike waves hit munitions bunkers near Sana'a. To reinforce the airstrikes, the USS Gravely launched 6 Tomahawk missiles into the rubble, finishing the job. By the end of the operation, the US had destroyed 14 Sikair M2 ballistic missiles, 3 additional SA-6 launchers, and 23 other anti-ship cruise missiles. Although this offensive greatly reduced the Houthis' capability to launch attacks on both aerial and ground targets, it did not eliminate their arsenal completely. That task remains unfinished and will likely be addressed in future operations. Will the US take further steps to permanently neutralize the Houthis' ability to wage war? Tell us in the comments below. Until next time, goodbye.